topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Well, welcome to Bill Martinez Live. Good to have you with us, sharing a part of your day. Lots to catch up on, lots to bring you up to date on in your world. My good friend Michael Lett's going to be joining us in just a few minutes. He's a law enforcement veteran. Obviously, we've got the shooting in Maine to talk about. We originally were going to talk about the border situation. We will cover that, and no doubt we'll be talking about what's going on in the Middle East as well. As I mentioned, our law enforcement veteran, Michael Letts, believes the president needs a more effective strategy to stop migrants from entering the United States. The president thought he had an effective plan in place to stop migrants from entering the country, but data shows he's losing by every measure. A new report, for example, from Fox News revealed that even with Biden's plan in place, illegal migrants are still getting into the country at an alarming rate. Michael Letts, welcome to the show. Good to have you with us, sir.
It's always a privilege, Bill. Thank you for the opportunity. And as you so eloquently said, there's a lot to cover here in the last week or so.
Yeah, without a doubt. But for right now, because, with all the focus in the Middle East, and of course, as of yesterday, the shooting in Maine, the border is being ignored, which is amazing to me because a lot of the problems happening in the Middle East, it's interesting that the relevance is there. You've got border problems. You have border problems in Europe that we have learned over and over through the years. Donald Trump had an effective program, but because Joe Biden hates anything about Donald Trump, has to do just the opposite. And so forget about something that's working. Let's throw that out the window and let's compromise national security and put our citizens at risk, right?
That's correct. I think especially, Bill, what's important is your viewers and your listeners need to understand there's a big difference between what Joe Biden says and what he does. I mean, he's very effective at evading questions. And quite frankly, let's just be frank, he's very good at lying, and he lies very effectively.
Well, let me say this, because my burr and my saddle, Michael, and has been for a long time, has been the mainstream media. They've been missing in action. This is their job, to hold government accountable so it doesn't go tyrannical. But here we are, we're on the border of a tyrannical government that continues to move with impunity. Although Joe Biden every once in a while complains, says, well, the media is not being fair. Are you kidding me? Donald Trump, 95% of what they report on Donald Trump was purposely negative. Joe Biden has been given a pass time and time again. God forbid that the media ask a question, or like the other day, he said it was a press conference, 12 minutes. He took three basically, softball questions, right, and just kind of straight armed the media. So, I think the media is getting a little bit irritated, but they need to go back to first principles and understand why they are in existence to begin with, right?
That's correct. Well, let's talk about a few real relevant. Let's set the stage, Bill.
Okay.
First of all, our Constitution, founding document for this great nation, requires that the federal government provide for the common defense and to promote the general welfare of its citizenry. Right. So its primary objective is it has to defend us. Now, it defends us from military, from abroad, but it also defends us here at home. And the only way to have a proper defense is to make sure you secure your borders and make sure you know who's here and who's not.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Let me just give a primary example. Just yesterday, Bill, alone, and what we're talking about is not my opinions. These are facts. Yesterday, we intercepted 8 known terrorists coming across the southern border. They were from Iran. They were from Hezbollah. They were also from Hamas. Mm-hmm. And we know that that's documented. There's nobody questions that. These 8 that we picked up. Now, understand, here's the truth. Here's what Joe Biden would have you believe. Even though last month we apprehended 270,000 people that were coming across the border, the gotaways are almost 80% more than what we apprehend.
Exactly.
So you do the numbers, that tells you there's millions that are coming across that we have not vetted, grabbed, or identified. Now, if Bill, if you've got 8 in a day that are on the terrorist watch list that we grabbed, imagine how many of them are coming across every day that we don't grab, and you add it on a monthly basis. We know for a fact that there are thousands upon thousands that have crossed our border and are on the terrorist watch list. And here's the thing that really frustrates me about the president. They don't just get across, but we use our tax dollars to help them. Once they get across, where do you want to go? Well, they've already got a master plan. They know what terrorist cells they've got across this country. So they ship them to one of those areas with a little caveat. By the way, when you get there, check yourself into a judge somewhere around. Tell them you want a hearing as to whether you're actually allowed to be here or not. That never happens, Bill.
Right. 8 years later. No, it's absurd. Well, the thing is, it's a consistent policy because it's the policy they've utilized in the Middle East as well. They are, protecting and serving and funding our enemies. And as you say, we've got gotaways, which is a scary thing to think about. I mean, gotaways, and and there's a reason that they're being so surreptitious and avoiding law enforcement is because they don't necessarily have any good thing in mind for this country. They're coming in with an alternative agenda. We haven't vetted these people. I've maintained, I mean, when you have a Homeland Security secretary who doesn't even know, Michael, he doesn't even know what the wristbands on these immigrants who are coming across the border, what they represent. I mean, that tells you how much trouble we have here in River City.
He is totally incompetent, but I want your listeners and your viewers to understand incompetency is one thing. A direct plan to destroy America from within is quite a different story.
Exactly.
I believe that this administration is following a plan. I'm not saying they started the plan. They started back with Obama. Okay.
Yeah.
You're the Obama administration, but they have a very precise script. They want to make sure the borders remain open so that terrorists, and not just the terrorists that are coming across, if we're able to transport fentanyl like we are, across our borders, sex trafficking, et cetera, they're also able to import arms. It's not hard to get arms nowadays because we left 86 billion of them behind in Afghanistan that are finding their way all across the world.
Well, and some of them are showing up in the Middle East. Oh, yeah, by the way, in the hands of Hamas.
They exactly are. So, we have set the stage. We've allowed, this is what happened with Israel in Gaza. Be a terrorist operation successfully. First of all, you have to have personnel. Well, of course, Hamas has plenty in Israel. And we have plenty now in the United States because we've had open borders.
Right.
You have to have funding. Well, of course, this administration made sure that there are billions of dollars given to Iran, who puts that all across the world to fund terrorist operations. So there's plenty of funding available for a terrorist operation now against the United States. And then, of course, you have to also have the armaments to do so. Well, of course, as we just talked about, with an open border, it's easy to get them across, having those armaments available from all we left behind in Afghanistan. So really, Israel was a precursor to what's fixing to happen in this country. That's why it's so critical that we talk about the border now.
Well, exactly. And Michael, they are partnering with, with the cartels. The cartels are bringing them across. You and I talked about this earlier. The cartel has an established network inside of the country in just about every state of the union. So they're happy to take in, they're this human resource agency because they all have something in common. And that is they want to bring America down. And, full stop. I mean, this isn't just to, blow up a couple buildings. I mean, they want the entire ruination of America because keep in mind, the chant in the Middle East is from the river to the sea. And what they're referring to, regardless of the silliness and the lack of understanding of our American kids here, that means the total wipeout and Holocaust and genocide of a nation state, Israel. And according to their policy, it's Israel first and then America next.
That is correct. And of course, one of the things that's so distressing for listening to that kind of rhetoric here in this country, or those who support Hamas, is that they're saying they're just liberation, freedom fighters, liberation. Right. There's a big difference, Bill, between a military operation and a terrorist operation. A terrorist operation is one that targets civilians, seniors, women, children. and literally just massacres them to prove a point, to create fear. That's what you saw in the attack by Hamas on Israel. That's what you will see in this country. It will not be a military operation. It will be a terrorist operation. They've got everything they need to make it happen. Now, I think one of the things, the parallels that we need to draw from Israel that's interesting to this country, most people don't understand, Israel had some of the toughest gun control laws in the world.
Right.
2% of its population owned firearms, only 2%. After this excursion happened, there was a emergency session of parliament, and they revoked all those restrictions and have actually reversed themselves and come out and encouraged every Israeli to be armed, providing training to make sure that this never happens again. So we need to be taking the same position in this country. We have a Second Amendment that already guarantees you the right to be armed. We need to make sure we're encouraging every citizen to be armed, ammoed, and know how to use it.
Exactly. And Michael, the deal is that the Second Amendment was put in place to be a remedy against a tyrannical government. And here we are. I mean, we're knocking on the door. This is a setup. The government is setting up. We've got a police state that is, running rampant right now with what do they have? 80,000 no-knock interactions with the public. And, and they come in with full-blown SWAT teams and, killing people and oops, accident. Wrong house. I mean, all kinds of craziness going on here. And the American people are being set up here because there's an alternative agenda that is not about America first. It's America last. It's America's eradication. And thank God right now that we have as many guns in the hands of patriots to defend against this. But I'm saying to all the patriots out there, you better get ready. Correct. because they're knocking on your door, and especially for people who are who are patriots, who love this country. And if you think not, just take a look at all the people they went after in January 6th, and then this recent invasion, if you might put it, or soft insurrection, however way you want to call it, that happened at the Capitol building with radicals on the left, not part of a conservative group. What's happened to them? I don't see them being thrown and put in solitary confinement and being held for an indeterminate amount of time.
You're exactly right, Bill. Here's the odd thing about it. What happened to January 6th, of course, we were labeled as domestic terrorists, insurgents, etc. People were carted away and held for years, even without being charged. Unheard of a violation of their constitutional rights. What happened a few weeks back with the supporters of Hamas, pro-Palestinians who sat in, same thing. They trespassed, they interrupt official meetings, same identical thing they're charging the January 6th with. They arrested 300 and a little over 300 of them. And 3 of them were charged with assault on a police officer. The rest were charged with trespassing. It's amazing they decided not to charge with interrupting a government meeting, even though Congress itself said that they were holding hearings and committee hearings all throughout that building that had to be suspended. But what's amazing is the 300 trespassers that they arrested didn't even spend the night in jail.
No,
they were all processed by that afternoon. And I mark my words, Bill, what they were processed with will eventually get dropped. They won't even have to show up for court. Those charges.
I'll guarantee you. Oh no, no doubt, 100%. A friend of ours, Jake Lang, to your point, he's been in jail without being processed for over. I think he just surpassed his 1,000th day in jail.
And that's what happened in the former Soviet Union. That's what happens in China. That's what happens in communistic or dictatorships. That is what this country was founded to be against. And now we're doing the same thing in this country. And it's time. What I tell people, this is not just some accidental oversight. This is a well-orchestrated movement. This administration and previous administrations are determined, as you said, Bill, to destroy America from within. They are on a fast-track pace to do so. Every policy they put in place leads to that objective.
Well, I've been saying that we have been, we've been told for a long time we're at a tipping point, and I believe we're on the other side of that tipping point. That's why things are going so fast right now. Think about it. When you're on the downside of the hill, things move a lot faster. We're talking with my good friend Michael Letts. Michael is the founder, president, and CEO of Invest USA, a national grassroots nonprofit organization that is helping hundreds of communities provide thousands of bulletproof vests for their police forces through educational, public relations, sponsorships, and fundraising programs. Michael, for just a moment, tell our audience about Invest. I know that, as we mentioned, you're helping local law enforcement and putting in their hands protection, protection that they can't, their local communities can't afford. And God bless you and for your organization for doing this.
Invest USA was created 30 years ago. We've been in operation for 30 years. When we started, Bill, 52% of officers had no concealable vest. Concealable vest was the only thing available. It was what you see an officer put under their shirt. It would only stop a sidearm or a pistol. That's all it will stop. Well, the criminal element decided to get a little bit more smarter, and they decided to start assaulting our officers with rifles, long-range rifles, which went right through those concealable vests. So about 10, 12 years ago, we had to stop, create new technology called active shooter vests with titanium plates that'll stop anything that's out on the market, rifle, pistol, whatever it may be. The problem, Bill, is this. We have 90% of our officers across the country that do not have access, do not have an active shooter vest.
Wow.
Understand we have 1.2 million roughly sworn officers. So you do the math, 90% of that, that's a lot of guys and gals out there willing to put their life on the line without basic protection that the criminal element has. That's just uncalled for, Bill. I tell you what makes it so frustrating is this administration can seem to find billions of dollars for Ukraine to be able to help them, quote unquote, secure their border, outfit their army, outfit their first responders. There's a line item in that money for first responders in Ukraine, but yet we can't find a dime to take care of the people that are protecting us here in this country.
Yeah. This is amazing here. We got all kinds of additional interference coming in, and I had to try to pull the plug on it. Forgive me, for a little bit of the interruption. But if we could, Rebel, I would like to bring up that footage of, Michael giving a vest to a local police officer. Tell us what's in this scene here.
In that scene there, we were donating vests to Palatka Police Department, which is right outside of Jacksonville, Florida. People will be surprised. We get literally requests from agencies all across the country. You'll see me handing that one to the chief, but there was a whole table that was to the right-hand side of that of the vest. We were providing that. We outfitted the entire department. And it's the same. It's amazing, Bill, when you go to these events, these press conferences. You have these big, tough officers that have been in law enforcement for years and years. They have a tear in their eye because, quite frankly, they thought nobody cared about them or their lives. And now they're finding that the public wants to support, they don't know how, but wants to express their support. And that's going to be critical in the days ahead because it's going to be our first responders, this thin blue line that you notice this administration is doing everything they can to thin it out even more. It's this thin blue line that's going to be charged with providing the initial response and protection when these terrorist attacks occur on the soil.
Exactly. And the thing is that we need to be aware because just like it happened in Israel with Hamas, again, these are learning opportunities. These are eye-opening opportunities that we should take into account and not think that we are protected, because this is what got America in trouble in World War II and even in World War I, but World War II specifically, because we thought, well, we're protected because, we're protected by two bodies of water and nobody can get a hold of us, right?
Well, that's what we used to think. We found out real quickly that would work if you had administrations that sealed our borders. There's nothing wrong with maintaining a border, because what we need to do now, Bill, is not only do we need to shut down the borders, we have the capability. This administration is totally off base and lying when they say they don't. We have the ability to go in and track and apprehend every single illegal immigrant that's crossed this border. You say, aren't you being extreme? No, because we don't know what their background is. They've never been vetted.
Exactly.
And those that we vet that were determined to be terrorists or criminals, because, the prison system across the world is opening their doors saying, look, America will take you for free. We don't have to pay for you anymore. Get out of here.
Exactly.
Those that we find that are terrorists or the criminals need to be sent back in shackles, not just released. We don't need to have them come back again. They need to be put back in shackles. The rest of them that are here, we can figure out what to do with them at that point in time. But right now, it's imperative that we know who's here and what their intent is.
So Donald Trump was right after all, that they're not sending their best. They're emptying out their prisoners, people with mental problems. They're saying, hey, look at, go north to America and enjoy a new life. You're not our problem anymore, right?
That's correct, Bill. Let's look at a couple statistics, a couple things that we know we've encountered on the border. First of all, we know we're encountering, as you mentioned, a number of criminals, just a plague of criminals that are coming across. How do we know they're criminals? Because when we run the crafts check, we find out they've been in jail in Venezuela, wherever that,
Brazil,
Bolivia,
whatever. Right, exactly.
So we know the criminal element's on the way. We also, this is an amazing statistic, Bill. Just within the last 6 months, we have apprehended 40,000 Chinese of military age, single males.
Yeah.
Okay. They're not families. These are single males. Now, you explain to me why 40,000 Chinese single males of military age are crossing our borders illegally.
Well, I can tell you part of why.
Sure.
Part is they're looking for women. They don't
I would agree with that.
They don't have women in China, so they're that's one reason. Now, are they going to be beholden to President Xi and the Chinese communists? You better believe it. Chances are.
Sure.
Again, to your point, they're not being properly vetted. We don't know who they're beholden to. And America is rather naive in not understanding the ties that bind, especially with the cartel.
Sure.
You're not going to get here into the United States and, have this opportunity without being beholden. In some cases, my understanding, and Michael, is that, these Chinese men are paying as much as $30,000 a head to the cartels, where normally, for people in, Central America and Mexico and that, it's somewhere between, it can be anywhere from $6,000 to $12,000. So they're getting paid extra to make sure these communist Chinese males get into our country.
And I think they're being positioned all across the country because, trust me, China has just as much interest as Iran does in making sure that we fall,
Exactly.
or that we are destroyed. So, because the other interesting thing about these intelligence statistics that I'm giving you, I was in the intelligence community, is that we also have tens of thousands of them that have stopped in Panama.
Yeah.
Now, why would you think they've stopped in Panama? Because, under the brilliant administration of Carter, and I'm being facetious, Biden and Obama, they made sure that the Panama Canal that we built, we paid for, our sweat and tears went involved in, has now been turned back over to Panama.
Yeah.
And of course, we're paying to use it. That doesn't keep China from being able to strike a deal with Panama to say we're going to control the canal. And should we decide to invade Taiwan, we're going to shut it down so the American fleet can't go through. It has to go all the way around, losing valuable time to be able to respond to a national crisis.
Exactly. Well, like I said, we're beyond that tipping point, and that's why things are moving so fast. And I think, what's happening, the threat, the pending threat that's in the Middle East right now, this thing, I don't think they can control it. Like the old sayings goes, Michael, you may not be interested in war, but war is interested in you, right?
Correct. There's no question about that. The same verbiage applies to what's going on right now. The most recent story was of last night, the active shooter in Maine. I just want to express to your listeners and to your viewers how what we're doing at Invest dramatically impacts that, because now you have an active shooter still on the loose. We'll talk about all the others in a few minutes. But now you've called upon law enforcement who don't have active shooter vest, and he's using a assault rifle.
Right.
To go out and find him. How would you feel about going to go out and find him when you know that he's got you outgunned and outmanned?
Yeah.
Not a very good feeling.
Well, on top of that, he's also in his home territory. He's in his home field. He knows the area, and law enforcement is trying to pick up real fast, what this guy is all about. Obviously, we know that he's armed and dangerous. There's, he's got some military background. There's also a suggestion that he's had some mental issues. So, law enforcement has their hands full right now. And we've got another situation where we've got, a criminal on the loose. We just went through that exercise for a couple of weeks where, a prisoner was able to break out of prison and be on the loose for almost 2 weeks, right?
2 weeks, that's correct. And you remember he was captured by Yoda. That's our K9.
Yeah, right.
Brought him down. Did a great job. I mean, but it's interesting as you mentioned that, Bill. Let's talk about for just a second. You touched on the fact that they're saying that he has some mental issues. This particular assailant in Maine. So you can fully expect to come in the days ahead the cry from the far left once again. We have to ban any kind of a rifle, any kind of weapon, or at least what they're going to call the red flag laws.
Mm-hmm.
I just want your viewers and your listeners to be aware of it ahead of time. What does that mean? Because they've been pushing that for some time. Sounds good on the surface. If anybody has a mental problem, they shouldn't have a firearm. Well, most people say that kind of makes sense to me. Here's the problem with their language, though, Bill. They won't define what mental illness means. Mm-hmm. So what it does mean under their current definition is if I don't like you, Bill, I can call the police.
Exactly.
And say, I think my neighbor across the street, Bill's crazy. Yeah. And here's what will happen. They will go there and they'll say, since there's been a complaint filed to you, we're going to take all your firearms. Yeah. You can get them back, but it's up to you to go to court, to get a hearing, to get a lawyer, to schedule to prove that you're not crazy, even because some neighbor didn't like you and said that you were. How ridiculous of a system is that? That is not what America is all about.
Right. But it's typical, though, of the mindset of politicians, though. They don't believe in due process. They don't believe in the Constitution.
Right.
And so they want, to make sure whatever they can control and have power over, that it's without debate. No due process. We're going to, throw you in jail. You can't pass go, collect $200 just because we say so. And, and the way it's happening, with our judicial department, with the FBI and that part of government, how it's been weaponized. This is all very dangerous. And I have to say, watching, Michael, how they've been treating a former president of the United States, what's happening with this judge who, is upset over a tweet. And so then he fines the president $5,000. And then there was some discussion because the president made some sort of statement that the judge and, these two people sitting next to each other, and the judge wanted to interpret it as it was, that he was threatening his, one of his, what was it, his court reporter or whatever. Yeah. And so then he has him come up, he asks him questions, and he just says, I don't believe you, and I'm going to fine you $10,000. What?
They're totally trampling on every single right that is guaranteed to us in the Bill of Rights.
Right.
And, you mentioned something I thought was very applicable, Bill, earlier in our conversation. The Second Amendment says that the reason you're to have firearms is we have a duty, not just an option,
right?
A duty to fight and to defend the Constitution for any attempt by a tyrannical government to overthrow it. And that is what we're experiencing now. And I remind everyone that I talk to across this great nation of ours, especially to our veterans, you took an oath. The oath has no expiration date.
Exactly.
And in that oath, we are expected to provide for the common defense and to protect against domestic terrorism.
Yeah.
And that's what we're seeing in this country now. It's just amazing what an administration can take the Department of Justice, the FBI, ATF, and others, and weaponize and politicize them and have them have a total disregard for the law. It's not just that they're politicizing them, Bill, but they're actually breaking the law themselves.
Exactly.
Bringing about a political agenda. That's got to end. And I'm telling people now, we must, as a nation, unite and determine to send a message to the federal government, wherever they may be. We will no longer comply with your unlawful mandates. We will resist, and we will do what is necessary to make sure the Constitution prevails as the leading document that it's always been for 247 years.
Amen. And it's paramount that everybody reconnect with the Constitution.
Correct.
You are protected by law, by the Constitution. But if you're ignorant, and understand this, we have elected officials that don't even understand the Constitution. They're disconnected from it. Even Barack Obama, he made this interpretation. Oh, it's elastic. It's how it. This is the problem that we have, is that they're questioning what the original intent of the founding fathers and this original document was all about. When you have, to me, when it's clear that people have broken the constitutional law, then we should have unanimity in the Supreme Court, but we don't. It is so partisan, Michael, and that's disturbing to me. That we end up with a 6-3 decision, or whatever. It's turned upside down. But it's like, what happened with the unanimous decision? I mean, this is a clear-cut abuse of the law. It's in violation of the Constitution. Full stop.
Well, we have a two-tier justice system in this country right now, Bill. I mean, it unfortunately goes all the way to the Supreme Court. And quite frankly, a nation can never survive when you have a two-tier system. You get one punishment, somebody else gets a different one.
Exactly.
And we can't tolerate it. So people ask me across the country all the time, how do you think we can fix it? Well, at this stage, let's take a look at where we're at right now. We have a president and a vice president, because you remember, she is the border czar.
Right.
Who have totally
who's never been there, but she's the border czar.
Who have totally neglected and are negligent in their duty, constitutional duty, to protect the citizens of the United States. We also have a president who is, quite frankly, needs to be investigated further for all the money that he's taken. I mean, I'll say it very clearly. He's beholden to other countries. He's sold. He's been bribed. It's treason.
Right.
How do you prove that? I mean, where do you go when your Department of Justice is under your own control? They're not going to investigate him, and we know that. They're going to give, again, lip service, nothing else. It's time in this country, Bill, that a military council be established and that military tribunals be held, because military tribunals, you remember, are not your general officers, your junior grade officers for the jury. They have 30 days. They can't drag this thing out for the next 20 years. They have 30 days to determine the basis of the evidence. Is it sufficient? Is that evidence show what needs to be showed? And is there grounds to go ahead and pursue having an indictment? If there is, then they go on ahead and determine what was the breach. And not only what was the breach, but what are the consequences of that breach? And then here's the great part about it. They implement it. They don't send over a recommendation to the Department of Justice, to the Attorney General, who's beholding to the administration. We think this is a criminal thing. You should investigate, or you should give them so many years in sentence. They take care of the whole ball of wax, Bill. And unfortunately, that is where we're at in this country today. Military tribunals, they do not run the country. They simply hold people accountable that think they're above the law. Like right now, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and the rest of that whole administration thinks they're above the law and above the Constitution.
Well, it takes a lot of courage, to make that step. Whether it's a convention of the states, which is a procedural issue, it would take some time to do it. We've got citizens grand jury that are being conducted, even as you and I are talking right now, that have legal basis. But it's, can you execute? Can you go the next step and hold these people accountable where they need to be jailed for their offenses, And, but the thing is, to get to that point, I believe, Michael, and this is just me, because I look at our Constitution, I look at the beginnings of this country, and it was born out of Judeo-Christian principles. The country has got to reconnect with first principles. It has got to reconnect with God Almighty, who blessed this country, who gave us this great American idea, who lit the lamp on that on the hill that shines out, that John Whitworth referred to. And he is the one that we should be beholden to. When you and I were growing up, 90% of the country believed in God. Now it's down to maybe 68%. And that big swing has us in this situation right now where we have chaos at every turn. Our kids sexes are being changed. They're being groomed, indoctrinated, abused. Abortion has gotten out of hand. Over 100 million babies have been aborted in our country since Roe v. Wade of 1973. And even though we've returned it back to the state, abortions still continue. We have a morality issue that needs to be addressed, because this Constitution, as John Adams said, was designed for a moral and religious people. We cannot expect to get out of this Constitution what it promises if we're violating the fundamentals of it.
Well, we've been taking generations for years in our public educational system. And what happened? Back in the 60s, you recall, they decided that God had no part. The problem with that scenario is the educational bureaucrats took it when they said God has no part to mean anything associated with God. So values, morals, principles had no place in our society. And so we've trained generations for years that everything is all moral. There's no value in life. There's no really right or wrong. And now, as you said, we're reaping it. Unless we change that, this nation is beyond hope.
You see, we can't really deal with these problems. I mean, I hear people talk all the time about, the homelessness issue, the mental issue, transgender issue. That's beyond our pay grade, Michael. How do you handle that? I mean, that is the hearts of men and women that only God knows and can deal with. And but if people who are already people of faith, this is where the church needs to come in. It was the church that was so instrumental in implementing the Constitution. People of faith who were right there, and they set the foundational building blocks of this country. And what's happened over the years, and particularly in the mid-60s, it seemed like a lot of things happened with freedom of religion during that period of time, because not only did they take the 10 Commandments out of the hallways of public education, you also had the threat brought to you by then Senator Lyndon Baines Johnson on all churches, getting them out of politics and bringing up that age-old argument about separation of church and state, and threatened their tax exemption. Unfortunately, the churches buckled, and they forgot that they were there to serve God and not Caesar, and it's been a downward turn ever since.
It's been a disaster, Bill. You hit the nail on the head. The first thing that needs to happen in this country is the churches need to repent.
Yeah,
the churches need to get some backbone again and preach the word of God and the values and principles unashamedly. I'm sorry, you cannot, have what we have today, this woke society of trying to appease every particular person. You'll stand for nothing and fall for everything, which is where we're at now, and it will ultimately destroy everything that's dear to you. Your families will be destroyed. Our country will be destroyed. Everything will be destroyed based on the course that we're on now. It has to stop.
Well, Michael Letts is with us, law enforcement veteran, also the president and founder of Invest. Michael, again, we cannot thank you enough for all the hard work and what you're doing, for local police and these communities. I mean, it's hard to believe that 90% of law enforcement officers do not have, the kind of protection that they need and deserve.
It's frustrating because here's where we're at. This is part of their strategy, Bill. Black Lives Matter didn't just dream together one night. It was part of an overall strategy. They realized, talk about the deep state, talking about the liberal ideology, the communists who wanted to destroy our country, that they were having a little hard time doing it from without. They really didn't want to take on our military. So they decided we would do it from within. They created our educational system. They went after that to teach them we didn't have any values, any morals. Then they decided, okay, we got to go after the police force who enforces the law. So they created Black Lives Matters to begin to use that as a tool to go after law enforcement that, hey, we're racist, we're, bigoted, we can't do anything. It's interesting how the mainstream media played a part in that. When you had the riots, with George Floyd, et cetera, what would they all do? They pan over to the line of law enforcement officers standing there, but doing nothing.
Right.
Because they didn't realize that the law enforcement officers weren't doing nothing because they didn't want to. They had been ordered to stand down.
Exactly.
Their city councils by their elected officials. But it gave the impression, well, gee, if these people are not going to do anything to protect us, why are we paying them?
Exactly.
So then they started to defund the police movement. They understood that when they had to defund the police movement, that in the thin blue line began to collapse, the violent crime would increase. They weren't worried about that. They don't care if they knock off a few people to get their agenda. When they realized that violent crime would rise, people would be scared. They saw that with COVID. People give up rights when they're fearful. So they figured you get so scared when violent crime rose that you'd say, what can we do to get this under control? The federal government would step in. Your state and local people don't know what they're doing. Remember, they're idiots. But
Yeah.
we have a federal police force that will come in and solve the day. They've already tipped their hand at what their strategy is. Guns cause the violence. They didn't say
Right.
the people with the guns. It's guns cause the violence. So they'll come in and confiscate all the weapons, and then you have no way to fight back, and then the fight is over.
Yeah, exactly. Well, like you said earlier, Michael, these are the very people that start the fires and then charge you for the water to put the fire out. Right.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
I mean, this is a scam. This is what they're doing to the American people. But look at, we're smarter than this because, George Floyd and my friend Vince Ellison said this quite eloquently the other day. He said that George Floyd represented what the elites believe is the classic Black American, quote unquote. And that's why they made him into a hero, because they want all Black people to rise to the level of George Floyd. Can you imagine that? I mean, and I think, and Black Americans and minorities are starting to realize the scam here in the game, because they came out with this narrative. Black Lives Matter all participated. Our government participated in this in order to keep Black America blind boxed and begging. They're off the plantation, but there's other ways in which they can keep them locked up in chains. And they get them to buy into this false narrative that a white police officer kills them. They didn't want to go through due process. There was toxicology reports saying that there was enough fentanyl in George Floyd's body that it was unbelievable that he was even surviving to the point that he was, and that there wasn't any evidence. And you know better than I do. And looking at this, so correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding in the report that there was no evidence of him being choked off, that there was damage to his throat or larynx that would normally have happened if he was, if he was asphyxiated, right?
That's correct. The coroner's report, and I've seen it, and it just came back out again. It was republished again. Says there was no physical injuries that would be a cause of death. So there's no way that his neck or somebody supposedly crushing his neck happened. The coroner's report was very clear. As you stated, there were not just fentanyl, there were so many other drugs. The combination of the drugs produced a massive heart attack, and that's exactly what occurred.
Well, and the thing is, again, how this is being played out and how George Floyd is made into a martyr and a hero by the elites because they want Black people to follow the lead of George Floyd, believe it or not. Don't get uppity, don't strive for, the American dream. Right. This is why, people like George Floyd are turned into heroes, but other people, other Blacks who have been very successful, they don't want to hear their story. They're because most of them are conservative anyway, so they're invalidated, and those Black Americans are put in the basket of deplorables like the rest of us, right?
You're exactly right. It's interesting what you just said, Bill, because this is their entire strategy and their attempt is they glorify those who promote their cause, and those who don't, they vilify. Just like the officer, he's serving a prison term now, and so it sends the message to the rest of law enforcement. You know what? I don't know. Is it worth it or not? Maybe I don't need to be in this career. They're trying to do what they said about let's dissipate the blue line and allow us to come in and take total control of the American people. And Bill, what you said when we first started this interview is very applicable and very frightening. We are on the other side of the tipping scale, and we are moving down that hill at wide open speed. And if we don't stop it quick, we won't be able to.
Well, exactly. And the thing, and again, what the globalists and those that are really pulling the strings of Joe Biden, because I think it's quite clear. Some people think maybe it's Barack Obama. Quite possibly. Most people don't believe that Joe Biden he's president in name only, but in action, not necessarily so. He's being told what to do. And he often makes the statement, well, I better do this because I'm going to get in trouble. The guy's the president of the United States. He's going to get in trouble. Are you kidding me?
It's hilarious.
It's embarrassing. It's hilarious. It's revealing. And this is why, as Barack Obama himself said, Elections have consequences. You can argue all day whether you believe in the legitimacy of the 2020 election. It doesn't matter. At this point, they're not interested in finding out the truth. If you resist the truth, they're going to throw you in jail. They're going to persecute you to no end because they got their end result. Nobody was interested in, with the J6 committee hearing that 2 Republicans participated in, which was a joke. They were not interested in pursuing the truth because the problem, January 6th was an extension of what happened in November, but they didn't want to investigate November. They had a scenario, they had a narrative already planned out, what they wanted to run for, and that's why everything was focused on January the 6th.
That's correct, because they never did look at what was the cause of January 6th, the election fraud and election, that occurred. They didn't want to look at the cause.
Again, our constitutional right, Michael, like you said, we have a constitutional right to, present our grievance, to the government. And if not, then, before you read the Constitution, read the Declaration of Independence and see how appropriate the statements that were made then, how they're coming back here 247 years later, right?
That's correct. One of the things that gives me some hope, Bill, in this whole conversation we've been having, is I mentioned to you that we're putting together a movement, we will not comply.
Yeah.
One of the things that I'm asking is not just out of every citizen, but I have a Republican governor. We have got to send a clear message back to the feds. You've overstepped your bounds. We're not going to put up with it anymore. Mm-hmm. What is a great issue that we can all gather together on and support and send that message? I believe it's the border. I believe the Americans realize after what happened to Israel, you don't want that happening here. You don't want terrorism doing that. So I'm encouraging every Republican governor that it's on the border state, and every Republican governor, even if you're not there, to send guard units, to take a position. We are closing our border. Our federal government, if you don't like it, do something about it, because we will resist, and we will not allow you to continue to bring terrorists into we have an obligation to protect our citizens. You've advocated your responsibility. We're going to do it instead. And I think that's where we need to start, Bill.
Well, we've got to do something, because whatever we're doing now is not working.
Correct.
And we're relying on our leader, our president of the United States. His most important job as president of the United States is to, as you say, is to secure our safety. And he has put us at risk at every turn, no matter what we're talking about in the Middle East, what he's done with his compliance and shenanigans and corruption with the communist Chinese, with Ukraine, and God only knows how much money we're talking about. I maintain that it's much more than $20 million. I think that if they ever get down to the bottom of it, we could be talking upwards of hundreds of millions of dollars. For Joe Biden to sell his soul out for $20 million, that's chump change.
Yeah, it's hundreds of millions.
I believe so. And I have no evidence on it. It's just gotten common sense tells me that's what's going on. And the thing is this was something that was part and parcel of the Obama regime, because you had Hillary Clinton, you had John Kerry, you have Joe Biden, and it makes you wonder. And nobody's asking the question. Nobody's following the money to say, well, was Barack Obama getting his beak wet?
He had to be, Bill, because here's what's interesting, and this is all public knowledge. This is, again, not hearsay. When Joe Biden told the president of Ukraine, we're cutting off, if you don't do what I ask about firing the prosecutor, you're not getting the money. He made the comment, you're not authorized to do that. Call the president. I am. The president was involved. He knew every play. And I doubt Barack did it out of the goodness of his heart. I'm sure that there had to be something coming back his way for him to want to jeopardize his entire presidency for such treasonous behavior.
But they're so well covered, by their circle and their alliances, that they're able to get away with this. But hey, look at even the one official from Ukraine said when they set this thing up, with all these different LLCs and shell games that they had set up, that they did this on purpose. That I think his comment was it would take you 10 years to figure it out, right?
That's correct. And we've cut through that 10 years pretty, we've knocked about 8 of them off, but we're still working on it. And we have to get to the bottom of it, Bill.
Yeah, maybe Joe Biden's waiting for statute of limitations to expire if there's such a thing in that realm. We got about a short minute left here, Michael Letts. I want to give you the opportunity to summarize and tell everybody again about your organization. Go ahead.
Well, thank you, Bill. It was a great opportunity. Let me tell the American people, what you saw in Israel is a precursor to what is coming to this country. We need to do a number of different things. We need to be united as a people. We need to be united behind our first responders. They need to have active shooter vests and have a fighting chance. If you go to our website, www.investusa.org, there's a list of things you can do. One of the most important things I ask you to do is just tell a first responder, a law enforcement officer, thank you for willing to put your life on the line to protect us. It'll make a world of difference. Together, we'll succeed. Divided, we fall. So let's be united. Let's put the federal government back where it needs to be. Put it back in its place. We don't serve them. They serve us.
And by the way, did you know Saturday is National First Responders Day?
Yes, I did. And
so I'm glad you brought that up because it was just brought to my attention. And this is a great time. It's something we can do every day, but especially this Saturday. Thank a first responder because because of what they've done for us. Michael Letts, thank you so much for being with us. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Bill. God bless you. God bless America.
Michael Letts, founder, president, and CEO of Invest USA, a national grassroots nonprofit organization. They're helping hundreds of communities provide thousands of bulletproof vests for their police forces through educational, public relations, sponsorship, and fundraising programs. Our thanks to Michael Letts for being with us today. For more information and to be a part of this mighty movement to return to God and save our country, go to BillMartinezShow.com. May God bless you and keep you. Make his face shine upon you. May he be gracious unto you and give you peace. Go and be blessed and be a blessing. Thanks for being with us. Take care.